Alright guys, Jameson, Alex here with part 2 of the Bard subclass roleplay specific tier list.
Yes.
If you're new to the channel or to the subclass series, we're talking about roleplay, we're talking about interacting with the world around you, interacting with NPCs, non-combat scenarios, avoiding combat, basically things outside of the initiative order. Not talking about your class fantasy, history, lore, background, that's on you, can't rate you, can't rate the abilities gained and how they improve your potential in those roleplay scenarios. Essentially, we're talking about exploration and social interaction and the abilities gained in these subclasses, how they improve those circumstances.
That's right.
So, all that out of the way, we also are doing a giveaway for D&D Beyond Stars bundle, new round of that. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to be entered in that. But what we're going to do here, I'll put up on screen while we're discussing this. The tier list on here, we have S down to D tier. S being multiple abilities probably that are potent.
Usable all the time.
Or in any campaign setting. D tier being stuff like almost no abilities, or they're very niche or not useful in most, if any, campaigns.
Right.
So that's kind of the range, the spectrum going on here. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of these subclasses. I'll give my opinion and my tier list ranking.
I tell him where he's wrong.
And then we try to find a compromise in the middle if there is any.
Because if you've seen our subclass videos before, it's kind of what our bread and butter here is on Urge. We tend to agree and think very similarly on a lot of stuff, but there are some times we like to throw punches at each other with words and tell them, no, you're stupid. That has happened already in this series. We did have a couple long discussions on a couple of them, but we do tend to agree more often than not. So let's see how Bard Part 2 goes.
Yes. So first up, we have the College of Glamour.
Fancy.
So with this one, at level 3, we get the Mantle of Inspiration. The ability to weave Song of Fate magic that imbues allies with vigor and speed. As a bonus action, you expend one use of Bardic Inspiration, giving yourself a wondrous appearance. When you do so, choose a number of creatures that you can see within 60 feet up to your Charisma modifier. Each gains 10 HP. When they gain the 10 HP, it can use a reaction to move up to its speed without provoking opportunity attacks. So, you're getting...
Did you get all that?
Yeah, I think we're good. Okay. And then, of course, this 10 HP scales, so that's whatever. But essentially, you're just giving a little buffer and some speed boost, which I think definitely has some potential in the RP, just because, obviously, movement speed can be very beneficial for chases, for exploration, things like that. And the 10 HP can definitely come into play if you're worried about traps or something like that. That could buffer some of the damage that could be taken from those exploration kind of settings. Then at level 3, we have the Enthralling Performance. It's a little bit more on the niche side, I'll just preface with, but you have to perform for a minute, and then all the targets within 60 feet make a wisdom save or be charmed. While charmed, they idolize you and speak glowingly of you, blah, blah, blah. The effect ends after 1 hour. If it takes damage, you attack it, or if it witnesses you attacking or damaging any of its allies. The good thing about this one, though, is it has no hint that you tried to charm it. So that's really
normally with Charm Person and other effects like that, they know you attempted to charm them, or they've been charmed after it's over.
Right. The issue with this one is it's once per short rest, and of course, how often are you going to be able to perform for a minute straight? You have to be in a very specific circumstance to do. You're going to
be like in a tavern or in a marketplace, things like that, where you've got a crowd of people around you.
Right. So definitely some niche use on there, but when it is helpful, it could be impactful for sure.
Yep.
Level 6, we have Mantle of Majesty. As a bonus action, you cast Command without expending a spell slot, taking on a special appearance for a minute until your concentration ends. During the time, you can cast Command as a bonus action, and any charmed creature by you automatically fails against a command spell with the feature, but this is a once per long rest ability. So with that one, obviously being able to cast Command over and over and over again is pretty crazy, and you're a bard, being able to charm someone is not the hardest thing in the world to do, so definitely can have some impact on there. And then lastly, we have the Unbreakable Majesty, which essentially you transform it into a majestic presence for a minute, but this is pretty much completely combat focused on here, just trying to avoid getting hit and things like that. Yeah. So with that, we have some definitely interesting uses on here, and I will say there is a lot of potential in the RP with this one.
Yep.
All the abilities, barring the capstone, definitely have some RP potential. Obviously, the Mantle of Inspiration with the movement speed and temporary HP is a little bit more on the niche side, but I think that falls a little bit more on the exploration, which could definitely come into play in dungeons and things like that, or even just traversing terrain and protecting some people to let you move at a little bit faster speed without worrying so much about getting tripped up on stuff. And then, of course, the main one, I think, is the Mantle of Majesty. Being able to just cast command over and over and over again.
Yep.
You can do some crazy stuff with that.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can definitely control some circumstances that would otherwise be very difficult to do.
Yep.
So, I think there's probably going to be some infighting on here. I actually put this in the A tier.
I did too.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Spoiler alert, I did too. Mostly for a lot of the same reasons you say, and unlike Creation Bard from the previous video, with Mantle of Majesty giving you just specifically command, and command is just like one word to make somebody do something if they fail the saving throw. It's not as open-ended, so there are some limitations of what you can do. Because of that, if you can be creative with what you can do with those one words, it does one word. Because you can't pluralize that, one word spells. There we go. What you do with that command, you can create some really interesting scenarios and very potent scenarios. Because if you just think of the one time to do it, and you can just do this, a bunch of times. As far as that goes, in that time frame, so you could just like you freeze, prone, lay down, like whatever, and then be able to get a party out of trouble or whatever. No significant arguments for me. I went back and forth between A and B for a while, but I did end up in the A tier, so we don't have any complaints there.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, next up, also from his Answer's Guide to all of the things, we get College of Swords. At 3, you get proficiency with medium armor and the scimitar specifically. You're proficient with a simple or martial melee weapon. You can use it as a spell casting focus for your bard spells. College of the Sword, something. Just thinking like rapier and like bards being fancy, like just slinging spells out of a sword. That'd be just kind of fun. Yeah, wow, out of a whip.
Name.
Wow. You get a fighting style because that happens.
Swords.
And it's dueling or 2-weapon fighting. So you're going to have two weapons in each, a weapon in each hand, or you're going to go with the dueling thing again. I think rapier comes to mind, and hiya. Anyway, and then we have Blade Flourish. Now those again, whenever you take the attack action. So instead of reading through all that, we're going to stop there because that's going to be combat related. It says attack action. There's no point going through all that. You get extra attack at 16. That's 6, not 16. At 6, just like with the other, with Valor that gives you extra attack. You do get it 6 instead of 5, but you do get extra attack. And finally, at Master's Flourish, with 14, whenever you use a Blade Flourish option, you can roll a d6 instead of expending a Bardic Inspiration die. This is really, I think, the most help to your RP, specifically because it allows you to save and or willingly spend your Bardic Inspiration dies in RP settings, knowing you can always use your Flourish. This is a unique ability that I really, really love for this subclass because of that, because it makes you know that you'll never run out of the main ability your subclass is built around, even if it's maybe a weaker version of it.
Right.
You can still do it at will all the time. And I wish more subclasses had things like this.
Yeah.
Really like it.
It's very interesting.
But because that's basically it ends up in the D tier for me. Because it's basically like you get one very strong indirect help for your RP.
Right.
And that's basically it.
Yeah, I don't think there's really much to say. I pretty much had the exact same thought process on there, with that being the only thing to do it, and it's niche, and it's at level 14.
Yeah, you got to get all the way to 14 to get to it.
So, I threw it in the D tier as well. I don't think there's really much to think about this one. It's very much combat focused.
Yes.
There's not really much to say
it's in
on that.
College of Swords. It's not...
Right, it's in the name. Of course,
it's not College of
Glamour
Glamour or College of Whispers.
Yes, which, speaking of whispers...
Segues.
We will move on to that one. So, with this one, with the College of Whispers, you get Psychic Blades at 3rd level. Of course, it's called Psychic Blades, so that's going to be dealing with combat, so we'll just bypass that immediately. Words of Terror. Words of Terror. I hear words in there. Maybe there's something with words in there.
Yes.
Oh, a target must save, a wisdom save, or be frightened. of you or another creature of your choice, which is
Love that.
the best part, I think, of that, because you can be like, that guy's over there is looking at you weird. And they look over and they're like,
oh my God. Me, I got no problem with you. I'm your friend. But back there, and you point at like the barbarian in the group or the fighter that's just geared out and all the weapon and stuff, it's like, he heard you say something bad about the way he danced a while ago, and just like, he's not going to take that well.
Right. And you're frightened for an hour this way.
Yeah, that's forever.
So that's definitely some RP use on there. And if they succeed the saving throw, they don't know that you tried to do it. So that's also very important as well. And then at level 6, we have Mantle of Whispers, which is a very interesting ability.
Yes.
When a humanoid creature, dies within 30 feet of you, you can magically capture its shadow using a reaction. You retain the shadow until you finish a long rest, so for the rest of the day, essentially. Mm-hmm. You can use the shadow as an action. When you do, it magically transforms you into a disguise looking like the creature, the humanoid that died. It lasts for 1 hour or until you end it as a bonus action. And, of course, another creature can see through disguise by succeeding on an insight check contested by your deception check. But you do get a +5 bonus to the check.
Yep.
And then you can do this once per short or long rest. The only thing with this is how often is this going to come up where you're needing to disguise yourself as someone else? And then while you're disguised as someone else, what is the rest of your party doing? I mean, you could be like, I captured these bandits breaking into our camp. And they're like, what? What is that guy doing? You know what I mean? Like, how often is this actually going to come into play?
Maybe.
It definitely will come up from time to time, I believe. But you're not going to try to capture every person that dies.
Yeah, it's going to be a very specific... You're going to have a specific purpose in mind when you trigger that ability. Not just like, well, I guess I'll just do this.
Like if you're in a dungeon or like a castle or something like that, then yeah, if you kill something, then you can maybe scout ahead a little bit. But it does only last for an hour,
It's got to be a humanoid.
Yes.
You can't kill like a guard dog and be like a guard dog running around the castle.
So, that brings us on to the final capstone ability. As an action, you whisper a phrase that only a creature of your choice within 30 feet can hear. Target must make a wisdom save. It automatically succeeds if it doesn't share a language with you or if it can't hear you. On a successful save, you whisper sounds like unintelligible mumbling and has no effect. On a failed save, though, the target is charmed by you for the next 8 hours or until your allies attack it, damage it, or force it to make a saving throw. That is kind of important with the saving throw part. Mm-hmm. Though it is charmed for 8 hours, you can do a lot with someone with 8 hours as a guide or an escort or something. So it definitely can come into play. Charmed creature obeys your commands for fear that it will reveal its deep, dark secret that it believes that you know based
Even
on
though you have no idea what it is.
Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So it is once a day, but it is very... I mean, if you're going to have someone charmed for 8 hours... I mean, it says
that's
charmed...
the entire workday.
I mean, right. It says they're charmed for 8 hours, but they're more like frightened of you. Like they're blackmailed by you, essentially, is what it is with this ability. Because it says that they think that you know...
Yeah, it's charmed in terms of mechanical effect.
Right.
But in terms of flavor, it's much more of a frightened.
It's you're essentially blackmailing them without having anything on them.
Yes.
So, but it is...
But they think you do.
Right.
That's all that matters.
I think the thing with this one that was the strangest to me is there's a lot of potential with it, but a lot of it is very situational.
Yeah.
And some of the focus on this one is split between the combat side of things and the RP side. So
sure.
I was a little torn on this one. I kind of waffled a bit on this one, to be honest. And I actually ended up placing it in the B tier just because I feel like when it does hit, it hits really hard. But how often is it going to actually hit?
Yeah, and it falls into as one of our general, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 key phrases we use when making points on this channel of campaign dependent. Because if you're doing a lot of nature exploration, if you're out in the wild a lot and you're not into like towns and villages a lot,
right,
you're not going to be able to find humanoids that you could take captures of.
Right.
Like, if you're on some remote island or underground in a cave and you're fighting, creatures, beasts, dragons, aberrations, undead, plants, oozes, constructs, monstrosities, elementals, that kind of stuff.
Almost all.
What I leave off?
I'd say fiends.
No, I didn't say fiend and fae. Anyway,
so
all the creature types that aren't humanoid, then that whole ability is gone and useless. But like James has said, when you do get tricks from this stuff, there's a lot of very interesting things you do because you're a bard. You can do a lot of really fun things
Right.
when somebody's charmed by you. I also ended up in the B tier.
All right, well, I'm actually surprised.
Potency is there, but limited potency. Like when it hits, it's violent, but when it doesn't,
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I'm actually kind of surprised that we both, because I waffled a long time on this one.
Yeah, I did too. And I had B plus because I was. It's one of those things. Like if you had said A, I'd been like, all right, fine. If you just said B, I'm like, okay, fine.
I think a lot of the criticisms with this one kind of are just a general critic with Bard in general, because if you're bards are definitely more focused on the social interaction side, so
their charisma
falling
class.
into exploration side of things is where they tend to have a little bit less, and then the combat for most times is they're more of a utility role most of the time for that. So social interactions they're the key go-to. So if you're exploring the woods, you're not going to be quite as useful.
All right. Finally, for part 2, we have the College of the Spirits, the newest of the Bard subclasses from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Starting off with your couple of level 3 abilities, you get the Guidance Cantrip, which doesn't count against the number of Bard cantrips you know. It has a range of 60 feet when you cast it. That is strictly an RP, and one of the best RP cantrips because it's just a flat D4 to ability checks. So it's never a bad thing. And the fact that it's a range of 60 feet makes it so much better. You have to be remotely close to whoever you're helping. And then also 3, you have your spiritual focus, which, being all spirity, it lets you choose spellcasting focus, like it's a candle, crystal ball, skull, spirit board, turtle, things of the supernatural flavor of such. And also when you cast a spell that deals damage, you restore hit points. You can cast an RP spell.
Healing's one of those gray areas.
Yeah,
where it's like kind of heal as RP, maybe. It's very niche.
Outside of the flavor of your picking your whatever your focus is going to be, that's really more combat lean. Oh look, we're still in level 3. Tales from Beyond, which is really the whole mechanic the subclass is built around. Also, still at level 3, we haven't left your initial start, we're still on the starting block there, is Tales from Beyond, which is the primary mechanic that the subclass is built around. The biggest thing that's going to be happening most often is when you're holding your spiritual focus, whatever you chose back, 2 abilities ago, still at the same level, use a bonus action to spend one of your Bardic Inspiration die. So good, we're tying that into the base class. Love the synergy. You roll on the Spirit Tales table, which is long, because it grows as your Bardic Inspiration die grows, which I love that. That's great. And then you get a different effect that sits in your mind until you finish a short or long rest, until you bestow that Tales effect on somebody. So basically, you're telling a story of such, and it's going to have some sort of effect on the creature. And you can only have one of these Tales in mind at a time. If you choose to re-roll it, you lose the one you had and gain the new one. So you can't just stack a bunch of these all in your head at once and then and fire them off. You got to spend one or waste it if you want to change it to something else. There are, without having to read through all of these again, there are some that are specifically RP based, like Tell the Clever Animal, and there are some that are more specifically combat based, and they can be used in either. So there's a little bit of ifing around on there.
Right. It kind of is like the Wild Magic Barbarian.
Yeah, kind of like the Wild Magic Barbarian, or when we get to it, obviously Wild Magic Sorcerer. Spoiler alert there, because, it's random. The one thing I will bring up in general about this is because the tail table goes all the way down to 12, because your Bardic Inspiration die will eventually get up to a D12. The most potent ones are further down the list, obviously, because as that die gets bigger, it's got a chance to hit, a 9, then a 10, then an 11, then a 12. All the craziest ones are toward the end for the most part. At 6, with your Spirit Session, you can do a ritual that lasts an hour with any number of allies equal to your proficiency bonus, and you temporarily learn a spell of your choice from any class. So a little extra magical secrets. It's one of those things if you I would let my group do this as part of a short rest, because you're not doing anything besides a little ritual thing. You're sitting there chanting, whatever whatever you're doing. You're not doing anything wild. Because it specifically does say an hour, short rest is typically an hour. That would tie in well together. Or if you do it in an RP setting, if you really needed a specific spell for a certain reason and nobody had, you could just grab it. Or, you didn't know Ray's dead and you didn't have and your cleric is down, but you got his body with you. You can learn Ray's dead to be able to get to it. That kind of thing. So there are some specific use things, and you could obviously pick an RP or combat spell with this. So definitely got an RP use because of that. And finally, at 14, you have your Mystical Connection, which basically says whenever you're rolling on your tail table, you roll twice, and you choose which of the two you want. If you happen to roll the same thing twice, you ignore the roll, and you pick which one you want. That's fun. So definitely helping the RP, just because if you do want an RP one, you've got a better chance of getting it because you're rolling twice and choosing. If you happen to roll the same thing, you can pick exactly one you want. That being said, because of the randomness that's there and the extra spell that is only once a day, even though it lets you pick whatever spell you want, and just getting the guidance cantrip, the randomness alone really hurts the score for me. But I still ended up in the B tier because I think the guidance cantrip is arguably the best RP cantrip.
That's fair.
Because you could argue there's more flavorful RP cantrip as far as a mechanical RP.
Right.
Being able to buff ability check, especially at 60 feet, so it'd be like actually to touch somebody, or be 30 feet. You can do it from way over there. And again, try to avoid the flavor things, but when it specifically gives flavor, like with the candle crystal ball, it does tilt my score a little bit and help it anchor itself in the B. The only reason why I'm not higher is the fact that the table is random, and you got to get to 14 before you can control that randomness at all.
Yes, fair. I was very torn on this one as well. I think this was probably one of the harder ones for me. Like you said, guidance cantrip is definitely one of the best RP cantrips by far, and being able to cast it from 60 feet is definitely very good. The spiritual focus thing, I mean, sure, whatever. It's very niche use on there. The whole built around the subclass with the tails thing, like you said, there are some that are more on the RP side, but I think most of them, I would say...
A higher percentage of them are definitely combat.
Yeah,
it's like 80-20.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. As far as their primary function.
But looking at that, the Spirit Session, getting a spell, is definitely very interesting, but it is a ritual, and it's very limited with the divination or necromancy schools.
That's true. I did not bring that up.
To be fair, with the divination, pretty much every divination spell is pretty much roleplay, so that is what it is on there.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't think of one that's not.
But the randomness on the table just really hurts it.
Sure.
I went with the C tier actually on here just because there's lots of nicheness.
There is.
And randomness. So between the niche and randomness,
sure.
And some of the limitations, like the divination necromancy, is a limitation.
That's true.
But it makes sense that it's divination necromancy being what it is.
The flavor of the class, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know. I just was kind of torn on this one.
Well, I don't disagree with any of your points as far as that goes. It's like the randomness is fun, but the randomness can be frustrating, especially on the RP side, because there's fewer of them if you're trying to grab that RP ability.
Right.
So randomness in general does make the unreliability mechanically challenging.
I would say it makes you very hesitant to use it for RP because you don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
And I guess the benefit is you know ahead of time what you have preloaded. Yeah. So that does help, I guess.
So if you've rolled an RP one, I was like, well, cool, I can use this. But
right.
if you've rolled a combat-based one.
But at the same time, when you do get to 14 and you're rolling twice, how often, if you roll 2, how often are you going to keep the RP one over the combat one? You know what I mean?
But you're going to take it only when you are in a situation where it's going to be helpful. Otherwise, if you're just rolling so you have one docked, you're going to keep the combat one 9 times out of 10.
Right.
Unless like we're in town, we're probably not going to be combat unless we get ambushed or something. But grand majority of the time, if you're just banking one to have one to start, you're going to take the combat one.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of like arguing against myself almost, but at the same time, you have multiple uses of your Bardic Inspiration, and with this one, your whole subclass is built on the Spirit table, so if you're really trying to fish for something, you could, because you're maybe not going to be trying to inspire other people quite as much as you would with one of the other bards.
Yeah, other ones that actually buff or give you more uses for your Bardic Inspiration to help people directly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still on the fence here.
I mean, you could definitely talk me into C because of the randomness alone, and because until you hit 14,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the biggest factor on there is waiting so long to get a little bit more control over it.
To get advantage on your luck.
And even with it, it's just the randomness I think hurts it too much for me.
That's fair.
I think that just hurts it too much.
Yeah, because I'm thinking more in terms of the fun level instead of mechanical reliability at times.
Yeah, I think the thing that really sells me for the C is, like I just said, is if you roll, even when you do get to 14, you roll twice.
Yeah.
You're probably going to try to keep the combat one more often.
Yeah, as a default.
RP.
Yeah.
Just as a default, not knowing what's ahead coming.
That's fair.
Because if you get ambushed or something, the RP one's not going to feel so great to have in that circumstance. Mm-mm. I think a lot of them, too, are more focused on the combat side anyways, even with that. So, Downgraded. We push it down.
I got taken off at the knees.
Push it down to a C. So that it actually does make it pretty balanced across the board, I think, with the overall rankings on here. So, yeah, for a recap for this one, we had the Glamour at the A tier, Whispers at the B tier, Spirits at the C tier, Sword at the D tier.
Nice.
For this one.
Balanced. So, as all things should be.
As all things should be. So, yeah, that's it for this one, guys.
I didn't bring it up earlier, but the original, the OG Bard, Shy Guy. Because if that doesn't just ooze charisma, I don't know what does. Now the question is, and you tell me down below, because I'm curious to see, and give me a good take on this, because I want to see this. This is a fun little comment bit here. Normally I leave comment ideas to him. What type of bard is Shy Guy?
Oh yes, I'd like to see that.
And I don't need a dissertation. Would you give me like a sentence that says, or two that says it's this because of this and this?
That's fair.
That's a fun little idea.
I like it. So let us know down below. Also, just as a quick recap, make sure you check out the other bard video so you can see the other subclasses, which are Lore, Eloquence, Creation, and Valor.
Yeah, this definitely seems like the minor league compared to what the other ones scored.
This one was a lot stronger on there. So, as a recap for overall, I'll put up on screen as a quick recap. Lore and Eloquence, S tier. Creation, A tier. Valor, D tier. Very well spread across the board for the bard.
Yep.
Lots of different potential here. If you want to focus more on combat, you definitely can do that. If you want to focus more on RP, you can definitely do that. Or if you just want to be an S tier and just be good at everything, you can do that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But yeah, that's it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you know when our new videos are coming out. Comments down below. Shy Guy, what is he?
What kind of bard is he? We know he's a bard. He's too charismatic not to be.
That's it, guys. Thanks for watching.